It's the 4th of July, Horn Island, Mississippi. Boats packed shoulder to shoulder in neck-deep water, music carrying across the sound, coolers open, kids jumping off the sides, everybody soaking up the last few hours of daylight before the holiday winds down into evening. Somebody's got a phone out, doing what everybody's phone does at a party like this, just filming. Not looking for anything, not documenting anything, just capturing the day the way you do when you know you'll want to look back on it later. The camera drifts across the crowd, past one boat, past another, past groups of people laughing, wading, calling out to each other across the water. And then it slows down, right on the back deck of a vessel anchored a little further out, away from the thickest part of the crowd. There's a man there, bent over, reaching for something. A drink, maybe, pulled from a cooler at his feet. You can see his shoulders, his back, the shape of him against the afternoon light. A couple of older adults are visible on that same boat, and a handful of other people are gathered nearby in the water. You never see his face. Not for a second. Not from any angle. The camera keeps moving the way cameras do at parties, and that moment passes like 100 other moments in that same video. Nobody watching this footage when it was recorded thought twice about it. It was just one more clip from one more holiday, buried in somebody's camera roll along with everything else from that day. That's what makes this so unsettling. If it turns out to be what people think it is, nothing about that moment looked significant when it happened. No one froze. No one pointed a camera on purpose. It's just an ordinary few seconds from an ordinary summer afternoon, the same kind of clip that gets recorded and forgotten 1,000 times over on any holiday weekend, at any lake or beach or island anywhere in the country. And yet here we are, weeks later, studying every frame of it. Short disclaimer, and we mean it. Some of what you're about to hear has not been confirmed by any official source. We're going to be upfront with you about what's known and what isn't, every step of the way. So let's talk about what actually connects a stranger bent over on the back of a boat to a name the entire country now recognizes. It's the swim trunks. That's the whole thread. The man on that back deck is wearing trunks in the same colour as the ones Nolan Wells had on earlier that day in the photo that's been shared and reshared everywhere. Nolan with his friends, all smiles, sunlight on the water behind them, no idea what was coming for any of them. That's it, a colour match. Nothing more concrete than that. No face, no name spoken on the audio, just a pair of trunks that look like the ones in a photograph everybody's already memorised. But here's the thing about the person who filmed it. They didn't set out that day to capture evidence of anything. They were just living their holiday like everyone else on that island. It was only later, after Nolan went missing, after his name was everywhere, after that photo of him and his friends became the image the whole story hung on, that they went back through their own footage, and something in that clip stopped them cold. Enough that they didn't just scroll past it and move on with their life. Enough that they took it seriously enough to bring it straight to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office themselves and hand it directly to a detective already working this case. Think about how many people must have footage sitting on their phones right now from that same afternoon. Hundreds of boats, hundreds of phones, all pointed in different directions, all catching different slivers of the same crowded holiday. Most of that footage will never surface publicly. Most of it doesn't need to. But every so often one person looks back at what they captured, sees something that lines up with a story they've since heard, and decides it's worth handing over. That's exactly what happened here. Not an investigator combing through footage, not a tip line generating a lead, just an ordinary person, scrolling back through their own memories of that day and recognizing something that made them pause. Now here's where this stops being just a colour-matched pair of swim trunks and starts being something with real weight to it. The metadata embedded in that video, the technical timestamp nobody can fake after the fact, the kind investigators lean on precisely because it doesn't lie, puts the recording at 2:23 in the afternoon, 2:23 p.m. July 4th. Hold on to that number because here's what happens next. According to GPS data pulled from the boat Nolan's friends were riding that day, that boat left Horn Island at around 4:30 that evening. 2 hours later, it turned around, pointed back toward the Mississippi mainland. Without him. Think about that gap for a second. 2 hours between whatever that man on the back deck was doing at 2:23 and the moment his friend's boat pulled away from that island without Nolan on board. No one has publicly come forward saying they saw him anywhere on Horn Island after that boat left. Not on the water, not on the beach, not anywhere for the rest of that night. We're not going to sit here and tell you what that 2-hour gap means. Nobody actually knows that yet. Not investigators combing through this case. Not Nolan's family, who have been asking that exact question for weeks now, and not us. All we can tell you with total confidence is that the gap exists. It's real, it's documented, and it's the entire reason this footage matters at all. Nolan's body was recovered near Horn Island on July 6th, 2 days after that boat came back without him. There's another piece of audio out there too, separate from this video, that a lot of people following this case have already heard. It's the boat call, the distress call made from that same friend group's boat on that same day, hours after the point where this new footage places a man who might be Nolan on a completely different vessel. In that call, the boat's operator can be heard telling a dispatcher their bilge pump had failed and they were taking on water. When the dispatcher asked if everyone on board was accounted for and in good health, the answer was yes. Everybody was there. We're only mentioning that call to give you the fuller shape of that day. It doesn't answer the question this new video raises. If anything, it adds another layer to a timeline that's still full of gaps, rather than closing any of them. And now, in the same week, almost the same day that this footage is surfacing publicly for the first time, something else entirely is happening. Something the Wells family has been building toward for weeks, ever since the earliest days of this investigation. They didn't feel like they could fully trust that the official process alone would give them the complete picture of what happened to their son. So they did what grieving families increasingly do when they don't trust they'll get straight answers. They commissioned their own autopsy. A second independent examination, separate from anything conducted by local or state authorities. That independent autopsy was paid for through Colin Kaepernick's Autopsy initiative, and the entire effort has been coordinated by attorney Ben Crump, the civil rights lawyer who has stood beside this family since almost the very beginning of this case, through the search, through the discovery of Nolan's body, through the funeral. Crump has said publicly that the purpose of this second independent exam is straightforward: to determine whether Nolan had any physical injuries on his body beyond what you'd expect from a drowning. That's the specific question this autopsy was designed to answer. Not to contradict the official investigation for the sake of it, but to make sure nothing gets missed, and to give this family a set of findings they can trust came from somewhere outside the system they've already voiced concerns about. It's worth remembering, too, that independent autopsies like this one have played a role in other cases that made national headlines in recent years, cases where a second set of medical eyes ended up shaping the public understanding of what really happened. That history is part of why this announcement, happening today, carries as much weight as it does. Families who feel unheard by an official process have increasingly turned to independent examinations as a way of forcing a fuller conversation into the open. Whether that's what happens here remains to be seen, but it's the reason so many people are watching Chicago this morning instead of waiting for a written report to leak out later. This morning, while a lot of you are watching this, at 8 o'clock Central Time, at the NAACP's National Convention in Chicago, Crump is expected to stand in front of a room full of cameras alongside Nolan's parents and tell the world exactly what that independent autopsy found. We don't know what they're going to say. Nobody outside that room does. Not the internet, not the commentators, not us sitting here right now putting this video together. As of this very moment, those results have not been made public anywhere. But stop and think about the timing of all this for a second, because it's not a coincidence anyone chose. It's just how this week happened to unfold. A video that could be the last known frame of Nolan Wells that anyone ever captured is surfacing at the exact same time as an independent medical examination that could finally tell us, for the first time from outside the official investigation, whether there's more to this story than a tragic accident on the water. Two separate threads running on the same timeline, neither one finished yet, both converging on this same week for reasons nobody planned and nobody controlled. This case has already pulled in some of the most recognizable names willing to publicly stand behind a grieving family. Reverend Al Sharpton led Nolan's funeral service himself. Tyler Perry stepped in to cover the costs of that funeral without hesitation, according to Crump, and confirmed separately by Perry's own team. And a reward for information, now standing at is out there right now for anyone who can help lead to an arrest and a conviction in this case. That's the scale of how far this story has travelled. Strangers with no personal connection to Nolan Wells, watching his family search for answers week after week and deciding they weren't going to just watch from the sidelines. And it's worth noting, Sharpton himself has been careful with his words through all of this, even while standing firmly behind this family. At Nolan's funeral, he told the crowd gathered there that nobody should be rushing to call this racially motivated, and nobody should be rushing to rule that out either. His words were to let all the evidence come in before anyone draws a conclusion either way. That's the same posture this entire case seems to be sitting in right now. Everybody waiting, nobody willing to say for certain what actually happened on that island. Nolan's parents, Christine and Elmore, have said publicly that they don't buy the idea that their son simply drowned by accident. They've pointed out that he was an experienced athlete who knew how to swim. They've questioned some of what his friends have said about that day. And they've made clear over and over that all they want is the truth about what happened to their baby. Christine even asked the public directly in the earliest days of the search to go back through their own photos and videos from around 4:30 that afternoon specifically. The exact window this new footage now sits right in front of. So here's where we owe you something honest, because it's the only responsible way to leave a story that's still this unresolved. Nobody, not TMZ, not investigators, not us, has confirmed that the man in this video is actually Nolan Wells. His face was never visible, not once, in any frame of that footage. A matching colour of swim trunks is not proof of identity. It's a reason to look closer. It is not, on its own, a conclusion. And just as importantly, nobody has confirmed what that independent autopsy actually found, because as of this recording, those results have not yet been announced to the public. Both of those open questions, who that man on the back deck really was, and what that autopsy is about to reveal, are what will eventually answer the only question that actually matters in this entire case. Whether this was a tragic accident on the water that day, or whether it was something else entirely. Until both of those things are confirmed, everything else you hear about this case is just a piece of a puzzle that isn't finished yet. We're not going to pretend otherwise, and we're not going to fill in the gaps with guesses dressed up as facts. What we will do is keep watching this case as closely as you are and bring you the next piece the moment it's actually verified. No speculation dressed up as a scoop, no filling silence with theories just because the silence is uncomfortable. Just what's actually known, updated the moment something changes. That's the responsible way to sit with a story like this one. A family still waiting on answers, a video that raises more questions than it settles, and a press conference happening this very morning that could shift everything we think we understand about Nolan Wells' final hours. If you want to stay with this story as it develops, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update the second it's confirmed.